Okay, we are set.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Veteran Affairs Public Hearing. Welcome. I hope you all fared well in the snow. We should have a fairly good, smooth meeting. I'm looking forward to the testimony and looking forward to learning more about all the bills we're raising. So before we begin, I don't know if Fred Boyd, if there's any comments you want to say?
No, just echo good morning, and it's good to get into the meat and potatoes of our work and start looking at the policy. So I appreciate you all taking the time, starting a little earlier than usual. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any of our rankings like to say something? I don't see anyone else. I don't see them here. No. Okay. Well, let's begin. Our first person on the list is Commissioner Tom Sadi. Commissioner, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, Senator and Co-Chairperson Representative Boyd. Thank you very much for affording me the opportunity to be here. Honorable members of the Veterans Affairs Committee. For those who don't know me, my name is Thomas Sadi. I have the pleasure of serving and the honor of serving as Commissioner of the Connecticut Department of Veterans Affairs. And thank you for the time to address you today. While the department agrees conceptually with many of the bills that are before you today and that are on the committee list overall, my testimony will focus on two concepts embedded in three bills that I believe have the capability of expanding support for Connecticut veterans with minimal impact on existing state resources. The first two are Senate Bill 788 and House Bill 5592, collectively referring to them as acts concerning veterans benefits for veterans discharged other than honorably. These bills propose to establish a process for veterans who are separated from service with a characterization of other than honorable, known as OTH, due solely to the veteran's sexual orientation or gender identity, and to treat them then as having been honorably discharged for the purposes of state-based veterans benefits. This mirrors Connecticut's 2018 OTH qualifying condition law, which is now embedded with Public Act 18-47, now codified in Connecticut General Statute Section 27103A. That was the first of its kind in a nation, which assisted men and women who had otherwise served our country honorably, but who had received an OTH due to circumstances related to PTSD, traumatic brain injury, or were the victim of military sexual trauma, or a combination of any of those three qualifying conditions. This concept, embedded in these two proposals, would extend parity of the existing OTH law to veterans who received an other than honorable discharge based solely due to sexual orientation or gender identity. Since World War II, approximately 100,000 veterans were involuntarily discharged from military service across all branches due to their sexual orientation. And while many veterans affected by this policy likely qualify for federal discharge upgrades, unfortunately, many have not either applied or are still caught in the complicated process, which, due to the pandemic, does drag out even longer than in normal times. The DVA, the Department of Veterans Affairs Office of Advocacy and Assistance, does assist veterans with discharge upgrades for myriad reasons, including those based on sexual orientation. When these upgrades are granted, they do result in the veteran being able to access both federal and state benefits. So it is my hope that veterans who wish to upgrade their discharge status continue to contact the Office of Advocacy and Assistance for representation by our team of veteran service officers. However, because of the length of time it may often take, I believe that providing these veterans access to state-based benefits provides them with equal and fair treatment to other OTH veterans who are covered under Connecticut General Statute 27103A. While there are no statistics as to the number of potentially eligible veterans under these proposals in Connecticut, I truly believe that the number is likely very small, as many of those who were actually discharged under the policy did receive honorable or general under honorable condition medical discharges. Others who did receive an OTH sadly may not be with us, because the statistics of 100,000 being discharged is since the end of World War II. So many have since passed. That being said, there are many who did receive discharge upgrades. So at most, my estimate, there may be a couple of hundred veterans in Connecticut who would be impacted by this. And while that number is small, for those who are impacted, the issue is great because it basically shuts them off from any and all state and federal benefits until either the upgrade happens or until we change state law. I'd like to also testify on Senate Bill 385, an act requiring all state agencies to include certain questions related to veteran status on their state forms. This issue has been a topic of discussion for several years in the veterans community nationwide and is commonly referred to as the "Have you ever served" approach or campaign. It's taken to identify veterans who are in contact with state agencies or even municipal government, but in this case, state agencies not traditionally associated with veterans benefits, or when that veteran applies for a non-veteran type of program, service, or license. As I've stated many times in the past, there generally is not a lack of veterans programs and services. Connecticut has a very robust set of those programs and services. But instead, particularly through this pandemic, there's an issue with connecting eligible veterans to the programs and services that are available to them. To implement this concept and to minimize the impact on state resources, both staff and fiscally, this could be a digital process. Applicant for a non-veteran program or service, including those for seeking licenses and registrations, would simply be asked in an electronic format, have you ever served in the US military? If they select yes, they could be asked then to provide, to answer a question, do you want or are you interested in learning more about veterans benefits? If yes, then to provide basic biographical and contact information electronically, which would then generate an automated email or other type of electronic notification that would go to the Department of Veterans Affairs Office of Advocacy Assistance, and then a member of my staff would reach out to that veteran. The reason that we'd like to do it that way, rather than having people make phone calls or emails or provide the veteran a phone call or email address to contact, is because we would aggregate them and then assign them weekly, if not more often, for staff to then do the outreach when we're able to spend some time with that veteran on the phone, conduct basic screening, determine what they may be eligible for, if at all, and then to refer them to federal points of contact if appropriate, or to represent them ourselves and process them for various state-based programs and benefits. This paperless process would not require really much activity until that information is received by the Office of Advocacy Assistance at the Connecticut Department of Veterans Affairs. So with that, I thank you all for your time, for your service to our state, for your continued support of our Connecticut veterans. I'm more than happy to respond to any questions related to the bills upon which I testified, or to any bills that you're considering today in this public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner, for your testimony. If anyone has any questions, we would ask that you use the raise hand function and we'll call on you. Any questions for the Commissioner?
We have Representative Boyd and Representative Anderson with their hands up.
Representative Boyd?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. I also appreciate the work that you're doing to keep the residential facility in Rocky Hill going safe and dealing with that side of COVID, which a lot of folks may not realize that DVA runs a facility in addition to the other work that you do statewide as well. So I know it's been challenging. So, thank you and your staff for that good work. In regards to the discharge less than honorably, I think the way you framed it is good. How does somebody prove if their documents won't specifically say, because everything that I've come to understand is not going to say on a discharge paper exactly the reason. How would somebody go about to make the case or to prove that that was exactly why they were discharged, not for some other reason?
Currently, for the three qualifying conditions in 27103A, there is a certification process where a licensed clinician or a member of the federal VA vet centers and certify that it is more likely than not, based on the information the veteran provides to them, that they have one of these qualifying conditions. That certification form is then attached to their application for state-based benefits, and then it is processed at the state level. The Department of Veterans Affairs oversees the administration of that process. We do not make the determination. That said, it is a little more complicated, as you now highlight with a very good question, with regard to the issue of discharge based on sexual orientation or gender identity. So I have looked at similar proposals in Maine, a statute in New York, which was passed last year, modeled on the Connecticut OTH bill, but also included that fourth qualifying condition, sexual orientation or identity, which are merged into one qualifying condition. The way New York does it is that they have set up a process wherein the applicant does have to submit a statement explaining why they were discharged with an OTH, that it comports with the don't ask, don't tell discharge, that they were discharged because of sexual orientation or identity, and then to provide any supporting medical, military, or civilian documentation that backs up that statement or that position. So they do have to affirmatively state that that is why and explain the circumstances. In New York, there's a process by which then those documents are reviewed and a determination is made by the agency. And my apologies, I think I might have frozen up here.
No, we see you.
Are you able? Oh, okay, thank you.
Yep.
So
No,
the issue there is that there could be a couple of avenues of approach. And I know that the bill is not drafted into legislative language yet, so there's opportunity to work on that. Mr. Kennedy, Steve Kennedy from the Afghan and Iraq War Vets, I don't know if he's on the line right now, was instrumental in working with the vet centers and federal VA, as well as with the Yale Law Clinic, to establish that process federal VA for the 3 existing qualifying conditions. That could be something that the committee could look at with Mr. Kennedy and myself participating. Another avenue, and I do not think candidly it would be too daunting for the agency to have that process similar to New York, where the files are submitted to the Department of Veterans Affairs. We conduct a summary review, a brief interview with the applicant, and then make a determination. But I would request the opportunity to work with the committee on that language if that's the direction, to ensure that we have the capability to do that within existing resources. If not, it would require some additional resources. I'm trying to avoid that burden of additional resources while addressing this issue, which I think is very important to address at the state level.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I think, speaking for my co-chair and I, that moving forward, we want all the voices that have going to touch this in the room so that we're not creating something that becomes a bureaucratic nightmare to actually implement. So I appreciate your candidness there. So has there been much of a discussion at least from where you sit on the federal level about this? Is there a movement at the federal level? I'm just not familiar with what discussions may be going on.
Since the repeal of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell in 2011, there has been not a change in federal law necessarily with regard to saying we are going to now issue a blanket upgrade for all those who had an OTH because of a discharge due to gender identity or sexual orientation, but that the individuals do have to go through the upgrade process. And so it is not as onerous as it was in the past, and it is accepted as a legitimate upgrade if they can establish that, again, just like you pointed out here at the state level, that the discharge was for that reason. Now, please be clear also that this does not in any way, shape, manner, or form relate to dishonorable discharges or bad conduct, BCD discharges. Those are not, I assume, not included in this. An OTH is very distinct from those. It is that one step just below a general discharge. And it more often than not is not for serious misconduct, but a BCD, a bad conduct, or a dishonorable should not be included in this because there clearly was other circumstances involved, not just one of those qualifying conditions. But there are opportunities. And again, as I said in my testimony, we strongly encourage the department and the federal VA, encourage all veterans to seek federal upgrade discharges, because even if the state recognizes their service for the purpose of state benefits, they are still precluded from any federal benefits. So we still would encourage them to do that federal upgrade. And the process is there. The virtual world is getting better now. The Veteran Board of Appeals and state our state veteran service officers, the Office of Advocacy and Assistance, are very experienced with that process.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate your time, and I'll yield back, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative. Representative Anderson, floor is yours.
Chairman, thank you. Commissioner, I'm retired from the Army Reserve and I'm familiar with federal benefits, but I do not. Can you give a brief summary, what state benefits are available and if they're funded by the general fund or by other means? Thank you.
So, we have a similar resume. I'm currently in the Army Reserve. Came off active. We have a little echo here last year. Just background, I am a judge advocate and an Army lawyer, 27 Alpha, so I have experience with this on the Army side with regard to discharge. But that being said, Representative, excellent point. Connecticut provides a panoply of state-based benefits that range from veteran flag designation on a driver's license plate. There are municipal tax abatements and exemptions, the Connecticut tuition waiver program for public universities. There are some waivers for getting copies of birth certificates, copy or waivers for those who enlisted or were drafted while they were in high school and didn't finish a degree, and they get that equivalency. There are, it runs the gamut from the recognition of certain MOS, certain skills that you have in the military, and allowing those to count for apprenticeship hours towards a license or certification in the trades. There is the Troops to Teachers program that provides incentives to move veterans who come out of the military into the education field and serving as teachers or teachers' aides. So it runs the gamut. The wartime service medal that the department issues are for our veterans here. These are non-federal benefits. Also, a veteran who owns a business in the state of Connecticut, 50% or more owned by a veteran that is a micro business. That means they have less than $3 million in gross revenue from the previous year. They can get certified and they have bidding preferences for state contracts. Trying to think of, there are many others in there, and actually the Office of Legislative Research in the General Assembly has excellent reports, I think up to the last couple of years, which list state-based benefits, including those for veterans who are not wartime service and those additional benefits for those who are wartime service, and then those who were injured or have service-related disability. So there's a broad range there. That said, this is a very small group of people, I believe, and I know the concern is the impact on the general fund. So there is a blend of funding. Some of those cost very little to nothing. The wartime service medal, we have them available. They've been funded for years back. The municipal abatements and exemptions, that obviously impacts the municipal grant list. And then finally, the other things, the tuition waiver program and some of the other veterans benefits would come either from the general fund or from funding streams that go to public education, the public universities.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Are there any other questions for the Commissioner? Please
Representative Ferraro and Representative Turco have their hands raised.
Representative Ferraro, please proceed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and great to see you, Commissioner. Always good to see you, and you're looking healthy these days. My question has to do with, I noticed there are two bills today for consideration. The act eliminating the service in time of war as an eligibility criteria for veterans. In the past, when this has come up, it's been met with mixed feelings from folks on the committee. Could you speak to it with regards to what size community are we talking about would become eligible for benefits if we were to remove that eligibility requirement?
A very important issue here, and we've talked about this in the past, and you're absolutely right. It has been an ongoing issue, that as well as the issue of the definition of veteran. That being said, first, let me take one step back, if I may, with your indulgence. Oftentimes, I know this happens because constituents contact legislators and say, I'm not eligible for a benefit. I served my country honorably. I was on active duty, but it wasn't in time of war. The first thing is, let's make sure that that's accurate, because very often we've run into situations where the person actually is eligible for the benefit or recognition that they're seeking, and it's just a little bit of confusion. That being said, the elimination of the wartime service provision for some of those, including such as the Connecticut tuition waiver, would potentially open up that program to a considerable number of veterans. So there is a large number who did not serve in time of war. We call them the Cold War veterans. I know it's war, but that's not under the statute. As well as those that served in peacetime, maybe between 1953 and 1965, or from the end of Vietnam, but before the Gulf War, and didn't take part in, Beirut or Grenada or direct combat operations. So would be a reasonable number out there, Representative, that this would expand the coverage to. And look, candidly, let me say, I'm a vet. My duty was CONUS, was in country, was not I don't consider it wartime service because I was not downrange. And I recognize that there is, conceptually a reason to have some distinction, I believe, between some of the level of benefits for those who are non-wartime service veterans and those who are wartime service veterans, and also then those who were injured or disabled in service to country. So I don't necessarily feel that, and maybe some vets might disagree with me on this, but I don't feel that it is improper to have those distinctions. What I would ask the committee to do is to look at, and the OLR, again, does have an excellent report, which lists out wartime service benefits and non-wartime service veterans benefits. Take a look at those, see which ones that you're concerned with as a committee that should be expanded. I'm more than happy to speak offline with the committee or to provide written responses to your questions on this. But I would look at those categories first, and then see if those are areas that you feel should be expanded. And also, obviously, I know everyone has to consider the fiscal impact, but primarily it should be the philosophical impact. What is appropriate to provide? And I think Connecticut does have, again, very robust programs and services for non-wartime service, including the DVA, our skilled nursing facility, our residential facility, the state veteran cemetery. Those are eligibility requirements for non-wartime and wartime. It's just veteran status is the only criteria. Over.
Thank you, Commissioner. That was my first reaction when I saw those. I mean, obviously, we want to help our veterans every way we can. And I just know that the fiscal note attached with making a change in the definition could be substantial, and maybe would be a benefit to members of the committee if the chairs could get a hold of that report and get it out to the committee members. I would appreciate it. Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Thank you very much, Representative Ferraro.
Thank you, Representative. Thank you so much. Representative Turco?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it's great to see you here, Commissioner. I'm looking forward to being on this committee and doing a lot of great work with you this session. Representative Chairman Boyd asked most of the questions that I wanted to on OTH, but just one follow-up. If we're able to pass this legislative session, what kind of outreach can we do to veterans to let them know about this change and to come forward and be able then to obtain those benefits? Is there a list somewhere, or do we just sort of do a PSA and hope some veterans that fall into this will come forward? Thank you for your help. And
excellent question. And this is relevant to so many things that we do. And how do we get the word out? Well, people may be surprised, but I think those of you on the committee understand there is no mass list or email list of every veteran in the state of Connecticut. It is through a variety of sources. But what we did for the original OTH law back in 2018, and we follow it this way, is in addition to a PSA, the department, we have our email list, our contact list for all municipalities. They're municipal veterans representatives, all statewide veteran service organizations, all state agencies, all municipal elected, chief elected officials, as well as community-based nonprofits and other veteran support organizations. We would blast that out with sort of an education, what we call, like on the Army side, we like to call it the one read sheet. It's more than one sheet, but we did that with the 2018 bill. We provided instructions, the form people fill out. I think also we'd reach out to many of the stakeholders in the community and advocacy group to provide that information to them. We found that, while at first it took a little while, people began to hear about that change in 2018 and to apply for those qualifying conditions. But there is not a single way to sort of cover the entire veteran community. But I think, Representative, that those who this impacts are looking and will be looking as they hear more about this effort. And so likely the information will get to them through these avenues of approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. That's good to hear. And you bring up a concern I hear from Newington veterans, that there are different benefits that are out there, here in the state or throughout the country for veterans that they don't know about, and they, for some reason, just don't receive that information. I really wish there was some kind of email distribution list that you as a commissioner and your department has that can say, hey, here's a new benefit for you, and we can get that out. The process now for getting that information out to veterans seems like information get lost through the way. So maybe that's something we can think about as a state to improve upon. So thanks for everything you're doing, Commissioner.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Representative. I think I saw Senator Olson's hand up.
Yeah, and Representative Buckby's hand, and then Senator Austin.
Okay. Representative Buckby, floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, for your testimony. It's wonderful to see, and I think these open discussions and debates are certainly will make it all work for us. I guess my question for you on the limiting service time as an eligibility criteria, you had said there was a philosophical difference more so for you on that. So I have two things with that. Number one, when you talk about that era of Korea to Vietnam when people were serving, I would also argue that during that time, it's a tougher time to register, right? Tougher time to get into. You're just coming off a war, and people are stepping in to serve, and there's something to be said for that. The second part of that, as far as the cost on it, aren't most of these people at this point aging out? And it's somebody that we should be stepping up more for and looking out for more for those who are elderly.
Excellent question, Representative. Thank you. And when I say philosophical difference, what I meant is I believe that we should look at it from a philosophical standpoint. What is the right thing to do? And that while money drives everything, that money, I don't say is secondary, but it is, I guess, first among equals, and that philosophical approach being the equal to it. That being said, the draft did continue from 53 to 65 and throughout Vietnam and until the early 70s, as we know, as a result of the Vietnam War was eliminated. So there was both volunteers as well as draftees going in at that time. So let me be clear though, that everybody who is a veteran, whether it is wartime service or not, qualifies for VA benefits based on their disability. It doesn't mean if it's service connected, whether it was in wartime or not in wartime, they are covered. The bulk of those receiving VA benefits at this time, federal VA benefits, are non-wartime service veterans when you go across the entire country. So there is no distinction there from veterans benefits. Now, those who are injured in combat obviously would be getting some additional VA benefits because that is in federal statute. What I encourage you to look at is at the state level, there are very few benefits that are solely wartime service based. And so to look at where it is that there is a problem, and maybe in that particular statute or for that benefit decide, let's remove the wartime service category for that particular benefit, as opposed to a blanket removing of wartime service for any and all state-based benefits. Again, State Veteran Cemetery, our residential facility, our skilled nursing facility, all of those are veteran-based. They are not veteran plus wartime service-based. So I'm curious if there are particular areas where legislators, yourselves or your colleagues, have received concerns from veterans saying, I'm not getting something that's wartime service because I was peacetime, and that's the benefit I would like to get. I would truly, really enjoy that dialogue. And if we can work that, I'm more than happy to support that effort. And what I meant philosophically is, as someone myself who's been on active duty, but not wartime active duty, even though it's during a time of war, I haven't been downrange, as we say, or in combat theater in the military. I don't have an issue with a distinction between some benefits for those of my colleagues, my fellow soldiers who have been in combat versus me who has not. That's what I also meant philosophically. So other veterans may disagree with that. I understand that, sir. But I'm more than happy to continue the conversation. I think there's great opportunity here to look at possible language that would address particular areas of concern as opposed to a blanket change that simply eliminates wartime service for all benefits and only makes it a pure veteran status review.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think that definitely clarifies that quite a bit. And I think the advantage of this conversation is that area of compromise, that area of discussion where it's not necessarily a blanket policy, but maybe there's an age issue, there is something that happens along that line for those in that time. Like you said, some were drafted, some were some enlisted, and I appreciate your clarity, and I honestly would love to continue that conversation with specific veterans who've come to me with this concern, and I'd love to see some more of that discussion, and certainly to have them speak directly with you or with your office too. Thank you.
Absolutely. You can reach out to me anytime, Representative.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield the floor back.
Thank you, Representative Buckby. Senator Olson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Commissioner. How are you?
I am well, Senator. You're
Nice
looking
to
well.
see you. Thank you. I wish we could all meet in person. I think I'm going to say that every day. So someday soon. I would just I'm a Vietnam era veteran. Anybody that is a veteran knows the distinction between a Vietnam veteran and a Vietnam era veteran, although it's not distinguished in statute like that. I think that we have to be cognizant of the fact that someone who enlists in the military, and I served overseas, just not downrange or in a combat theater. But I think that we have to recognize that people don't choose when war will happen or when any sort of action requiring a military person from an in-country position to protecting the country position is not that clear. You never really know. And I think that that's a distinction that while some people did not necessarily serve during wartime, some people signed up and served and ended up being in a wartime situation that they never thought would happen. So would you say that that's a fair statement?
Yes, and I know you served in Europe, and I've actually had some veterans say to me, Commissioner, oh, you didn't serve in Europe.
I was in Japan.
Okay. So I have had some veterans who served in Japan, and others in particular who served in Germany in the 1950s and 60s. Said, Commissioner, yes, we're technically not wartime, but we were on the front line, for example, waiting for the Soviet armies to come through the Fulda Gap in Czechoslovakia and pour into Germany. So we were on a front line, and it wasn't combat until it would become combat. So I understand that, Senator, and that's why in response to Representative Buckby, what I said is, let's look and see, are there particular benefits that these veterans are speaking about? And if we can identify them, I really would like to have that conversation, because it absolutely is an important point. And if we're able to do it both fiscally and philosophically, I think that we should look at that. What I'm just want to be cautious with is a blanket change to eliminate wartime service as a qualifier for any benefit where it currently is a qualifier. So to look at the particular benefit and to go forward from there.
I don't disagree with that. I would also like to state that to get a fiscal note, we have to pass the bill out of this committee to get a true fiscal note from the Office of Fiscal Analysis in order to come up with a reasonable ability to understand what something may cost us. And I'm hesitant to say that it should be just on a fiscal basis because the fiscal note would be based on the number of veterans that are eligible, but not every eligible veteran is going to necessarily use that service, as is the case in many ways where veterans don't take advantage of a service that's out there for them. some because they don't know about it, but some because they just choose not to. They have other means for medical care, or they are going to be, buried in a family plot, or any number of reasons, or they just don't want to go to college. It just seems to me that when the fiscal note comes out, it incorporates all known people that could use whatever that benefit may be. So I think I sort of lean more towards is this the right thing to do? Do you know how Connecticut fares in relationship to other states for veterans benefits? We've enacted a number of laws to bring us into parity with those other states. Are we getting to that point?
Yeah, Senator, based on my discussions with my colleagues across, a member of the National Association of State Directors of Veterans Affairs, Connecticut does have, and we put out variously within the group tracking sheets, okay, what states have what benefits. Connecticut ranks high up there with the benefits that we have, in particular, the tuition waiver, the micro business certification for veterans, bidding preferences, as well as our state home, our state cemetery, and many of the other benefits. So that being said, going back to your point with regard to the wartime service, again, I agree. Philosophically, the right thing to do should be the primary consideration. And to put a bill out and not to, I don't know the detail of how the process will work going forward and how you all will work together in reporting out some bills that will then receive at least a fiscal note when they're drafted. If you look at OLR's research and list the wartime service benefits, cross-reference them with the non-wartime service veterans benefits, identify those that you believe philosophically should be no longer have a wartime service qualifier, you could potentially put those into the bill. And then that would provide the opportunity to at least get a fiscal note and understand the potential scope. But that being said, for all of you who are not familiar, Senator Austin is absolutely correct. Many veterans, look, including myself, I'm lucky. I have a wonderful job with the state. I have great state coverage. So I'm not utilizing those VA side benefits that I'm eligible for, except when I was on active duty, I did use TRICARE. But so there are many veterans out there who don't utilize those programs and service and benefits because they either have them through other public sector avenues or in the private sector, or simply choose not to at times. So those fiscal notes would say the possible eligible number, it's always something less than that who actually utilize those programs.
Thank you very much. And I would return this to the good chairman, Senator Cabrera, and thank you very much for coming today and appreciate your service.
Thank you, Austin. Thank you for your service as well.
Thank you, Senator Alston. Are there any more questions for the commissioner?
I don't see any more hands raised, and we do have Representative Boyer with us now, so
Okay.
she would be the next on the list.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Commissioner. Thank you for taking time to visit with us. We appreciate it. We look forward to further dialogue with you.
Senator and Representative Boyd, thank you very much. And I thank the committee. Please reach out to my office. I truly mean it when I say I'd like to talk to you all, either individually, small groups or larger groups, in working on crafting those legislative initiatives that you look at, that you're going to choose to move forward here.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you all very much. Be well.
Thank you. Up next, we have Representative Boyer.
Thank you, Chairman Cabrera and Boyd and ranking members, Mr. Ciccarella and Kurt Vale. I am Dorinda Boer. I am the state representative of the 115th District, West Haven, and the former chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee. Miss you all. I'm going to read to you my testimony because I wrote it out because I want to make sure I don't miss anything, and I do have it down to 3 minutes. I'm here to discuss my support for a bill I've proposed, which is Bill 5737, the creation of a statewide military and veterans trail in Connecticut, to not only provide a well-deserved recognition for our heroes, but it can be a tourism attraction that many within Connecticut or out of Connecticut come to experience. Throughout the country, there are many landmarks and locations in existence that recognize the sacrifice of our veterans. We have many of those landmarks here in Connecticut. However, there is presently no trail that directly links the military museums, memorials, and landmarks together. in an easy path for those that are seeking to visit them. As this is an unprecedented effort, I believe it will attract tourists and history buffs alike, and Connecticut can be one of the first. In the state of Connecticut, we have many landmarks that remember the contributions of the military across centuries and countless historic events, including the West Haven Veterans Museum, the Greater Middletown Military Museum, the USS Nautilus in Groton, statutes honoring heroes, landmarks of battlegrounds, and even historic cemeteries. While the tourism this trail may bring the state is great, this is also an opportunity to better acknowledge the pivotal role of our veterans, past and present, in this beautiful state that we call home. Military memorials remind us of the principles that our nation and state were founded upon and the sacrifices that allow us the life that we live today. Historic landmarks allow us the chance to reflect on the past and understand what today's efforts are all about. Driving through Connecticut today, you can spot memorials and monuments from afar. You can easily pull over to the side of the road and consider them and explain them. But with a designated and a defined military and veterans trail, Connecticut natives and our state tourists alike will be able to easily navigate those landmarks as it will be defined and mapped out for them with additional information in that map out. Connecticut has a wine trail, a chocolate trail, a beer trail. Why not a military and a veterans trail? Finally, I want to take the opportunity to thank Paul Tarbucks, who was the former clerk of this committee and worked with me on this concept last year. But as you know, our time ran short. I'm hoping this is the year we move this idea and concept over the finish line. And I hope when we're all together at the end of summer, we can all be together again, that the committee, we can all take a trip and go on that military and veterans tourism together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Boer. Are there any questions for Representative Boer?
We have Representative Turco, followed by Representative Boyd.
Representative Turco, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Boer, it's so good to see you here. And when I asked to be on this committee, I thought I was going to be serving with you on the committee, but I'm glad to see you're here testifying. I just want to quickly say that I love this idea. When I was looking through the list of bills in our committee, I quickly co-sponsored it for all the reasons you stated, to honor our veterans, but for tourism, people out of state, people doing staycations in state, for everyone to understand the history that we have here in Connecticut. It will be great for school groups once they can start doing tours and stuff like that. So there's so many great ideas here. I just wanted to quickly ask, you mentioned this was unprecedented. I don't know if you meant just here in Connecticut, or is anywhere, any state in the nation doing something like this?
Well, you know, I Google searched and I researched. I didn't find one. It's not to say that it's not, you know, it didn't come to the top of my search, or there's not, that doesn't exist somewhere in some county, in some state. I just couldn't find one. So it'll be certainly the first in Connecticut. I think we're the first in the country, but we need to do a little bit more research around that.
Well, either way, it's great for Connecticut to be first. We've been first on so many things. And I don't think this would be difficult to do. Like you mentioned, we have the resources are there. It's just, I guess, the marketing of it, right? Building a website, materials. Is that what you were, and then promotion, is that what you were envisioning?
Yeah, so we have a segment within DECD, Department of Economic Development, that works on tourism and marketing and things like this. And I think that they would work on it. But I think it would be great if we got our veterans and our active military personnel involved in the process, and they helped to create the trail, because I think, you know, they would be happy to participate in that process. And I'm sure there's many areas that we're not aware of that they're more familiar with. So I think, yes, it would come under the DECD umbrella, but I think having volunteers participate to create this trail would be great.
That's a good idea. I think they'd really enjoy doing that. So thank you very much to you and to Paul Tarbuck, who served on this committee as the clerk for so many years and is a veteran. Thank you both for bringing this idea to us. I love it, and I will definitely help push it along.
Thank you. And I think even though I'm not chair, you're in good hands with my replacement.
Thank you, Representative Turco. Representative Boyd?
I was just going to say, Representative Turco, I don't know if it was disappointment more than, you know, the prior chair. Anyway, welcome back, Representative. I think it's a great idea. I think there's a lot of potential with it. In the past, did we get as far as a fiscal note or?
No, we never even made it to get it on the agenda. So it was something that Paul and I had been talking about while we were working on legislation, but we never got that far. So I think, like all bills, we just have to start from scratch.
Sure. And I think there will be, I suspect there would be private sector interest in this as well. So,
Yeah.
we definitely want to get this over the finish line, but I just wanted to welcome you back to the committee, and this is a great idea. So thank you for putting it forward.
Yeah, and I think that, if you decide to move forward, I think we can engage our federal delegation as well. And I think that if there's not an appropriation within the Connecticut budget, that I'm sure that they would be willing to help. And I don't foresee that the cost would be significant. Again, it's just a matter of gathering the sites, putting it together, and then marketing it. That would be the cost. But we can market it very inexpensively through social media as well, and veteran organizations.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Boyd. Is there any other questions for Representative Borer?
Senator Doherty Abrams has her hand up.
Oh, Senator Abrams, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Representative Boyer. I love this idea. I really love the idea of having the veterans be involved, but also having it available for students. So I'd love to see them be involved too.
Oh, great.
Student groups who would like to work with the veterans to help develop this. I think it would be just such a great learning opportunity and a way to bring our communities together. So thank you so much. This is a wonderful idea.
Yeah, no, that's great. Let's bring the students in and that will help them work together. I love it. See what brainstorming does?
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Any other questions for Representative Borer?
I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay, I want to thank you all for allowing me the opportunity. Thank you for all the work that you're doing on the committee, and of course, thank you to all our veterans and our military personnel. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day. Erica, next up I have Senator Haskell.
Yes.
Senator Haskell, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. It's good to see you, and thanks so much to the committee for allowing me to come testify today. I will be very brief. I just wanted to share a few words in support of SB 385, and I thank the commissioner for his supportive testimony this morning and his partnership in coming up with this bill. As I know this committee is well aware, in 2018, 47 veterans in the state of Connecticut died from suicide. Veterans put their lives on the line to protect our quality of life, but too often we know that they struggle when they return to civilian life. As I've learned more about this issue from constituents, from experts, and from the commissioner himself, I've learned that our federal and state government provide really high quality resources, including mental health care and other rehabilitation services. And the data shows that when veterans connect with those federal and state interventions, it can make all the difference. Look at in 2017 and 2018, suicide rates declined by 2.4% among veterans who accessed VA care. Meanwhile, other veterans who didn't access that VA care saw suicide rates increase by 2.5%. So I think that our state needs to do a better job of connecting. And I think Representative Turco talked about this earlier about another issue, connecting veterans with the resources they so deserve. So this bill would add just 2 questions to all state forms. Have you ever served in the military, and do you need assistance? These would be state forms used by the state police, state forms used by the Department of Motor Vehicles, and any other state agency. If any veteran answers yes, they're immediately referred to state and federal agencies responsible for their well-being so that we can better connect those veterans with resources that will make all the difference in their lives. With 20 veterans a day dying from suicide across the country, we can't wait another minute before providing a helping hand to those who served us. So I hope that this committee will consider acting favorably on 385. I am grateful to the commissioner for his partnership on this bill, and I would be more than happy to answer any questions that the committee has.
Thank you, Senator Haskell. Thank you so much. Are there any questions for Senator Haskell?
This is Senator Abrams. Welcome, Senator Haskell. Nice to see you. Not so much a question, but a comment. I think I shared this before in this committee, but I was at an event and celebrating veterans who were over 100 years old. And when I asked one of them, I explained that I was on this committee and what we did and if he had any words of advice. And he told me to take care of the young people, in his words. He said, they're having a very hard time. And so that has been my mantra as I go through this session. And I think that what you're suggesting here does exactly that. So I thank you for bringing this up, and I think it will help people, so help our veterans. So thank you so much, Senator Haskell.
Thank you so much, Senator Dr. Abrams. And I think you and your constituent are exactly right. We know services are especially underutilized for young veterans. Iraq and Afghanistan war veterans see a 60% greater risk of suicide than non-veterans. So I think you raise a really good point, and I'm grateful for your friendship and support.
Are there any other questions for Senator Haskell or comments? All right, seeing none, Senator Haskell, thank you so much, sir, for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Stay healthy.
All right, have a great day. Okay, is Mr. Kennedy here?
I'm here.
Good morning, Mr. Kennedy.
Good morning. Thank you. Is it right if I keep my video off? You caught me in the middle of driving my kids to school, so I want to keep you on the hands free here.
That's quite all right. You can go right ahead.
Great, thank you. So my name is Steve Kennedy. I'm a resident of Fairfield, and I'm also the Connecticut team leader for Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. I'm here to speak on a couple of bills. First would be SB 788 and HB 5592, which would extend state benefits to veterans discharged for their sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. I submitted written testimony that goes through more of the numbers and things like that. So today I'd like to focus more on just the impact that a less than honorable discharge can have on a veteran. So as the commissioner pointed out, once you go below a general discharge into an other than honorable discharge or lower, you're aside from the categories that we did expand to a few years ago, veterans are cut off from state benefits. They don't qualify for any of the assistance, almost any of the assistance that the state provides. And the veteran population that we're talking about who have less than honorable discharges face greater likelihoods of being homeless. It was a study from the government from the GAO found that 62% of them were leaving the service with a mental health condition. They die by suicide at twice the rate of their peers with honorable discharges. These are people who absolutely need our support. And in the case of the population that we're talking about today, these are people who are discharged only for who they are, not for anything that they did while they were in the service. And this, especially since we took the important step of recognizing some of the flaws in the discharge system, this is a really glaring one that I think it's time for us to address. So I was really happy to see the committee take up this bill, and we would really strongly encourage you to support this. I would add to Commissioner Sadi's testimony a little bit on the population. I would actually, my estimate would be a little bit more conservative. So basically, this is in the written testimony, but discharges, for the data that we have under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, it's about 2% of less honorable discharges. And the estimate that Yale Law School got for us a few years ago was about 1,700 to 2,200 veterans in the state with less than honorable discharges of any kind for any reason. So, when we're looking at it, we think we're probably talking about something only like dozens of veterans. But for those dozens of veterans, this could really mean just a world of difference. So again, I think we should be pushing this. I would be hesitant to necessarily cut this off only to veterans with an OTH. So it's true that right now, as the federal policies stand, it would be pretty unlikely for someone to receive, say, a dishonorable discharge just for their sexual orientation. But
I'm sorry
for-
to interrupt, Mr. Kennedy. You've reached your 3 minutes, so if you can just wrap up, then if the committee has questions.
Sure. So during World War II and Korea, there were veterans who were discharged dishonorably for their sexual orientation. But anyway, I would strongly support this bill. We also have concerns with SB 130, which we've expressed in the past, but I'd be happy to answer any questions about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. We appreciate your testimony today. Are there any questions for Mr. Kennedy?
Representative Boyd.
Representative Boyd, please proceed, sir.
Steve, welcome back to the committee. We appreciate your advocacy on this, your work in prior sessions, and I know as we have public hearings, you'll be back again on some other issues as well. You know, I was going to ask you about the OTH piece as the commissioner brought up, because I do think that that's going to be, if there's a sticking point as we're trying to craft policy that's realistic, but also doesn't create a bureaucratic mess. You know, that seems to me as we're starting to wade through the policy as the one area that we're going to have to find that sweet spot for. But what is your take on the commissioner's idea that, you know, perhaps the department itself may have a role in, you know, bringing this stuff together and kind of prescribing the process there? Or how do you envision the process of somebody who wishes to kind of challenge their discharge and become eligible for state benefits?
Sure. So, I mean, from my perspective, like I'm always going to come at this from whatever's going to be most permissive of a veteran, personally. So,
sure.
I mean, if I had my way, you know, only talking about a couple thousand people, I would say let's not use discharge characterization as an eligibility to begin with, rather than picking off these individual issues. I think that's a question for another session, probably. But as far as dealing with this, I think that, you know, something that we've discussed with, you know, when we worked with Yale Law School in the past, I think that it would be fair to, you know, count as evidence, even just a sworn statement under penalty of perjury, something like that. Not, I mean, I think it's unlikely that would ever be investigated, but that wouldn't be unprecedented. We have, you know, we do use just statements like that. I think that the department, you know, as long as it's within their budget, because that's, you know, a concern that we always have is like, we don't want the DVA provides such crucial services. We don't want to overburden them, but I think that I would, if the commissioner thinks that that's something they can handle, we would be comfortable with that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you again, and we look forward to talking to you more as we look at some other policies and try to get, you know, legislative language that works for this. So thank you, sir. I yield back.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Boyd. Are there any other questions for Mr. Kennedy? Okay. Mr. Kennedy, thank you so much for your time, sir. Look forward to talking to you again.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Have a good day. Next up, we have Ms. Emily Trudeau. Good morning, Ms. Trudeau.
Good morning and thank you. Just for a little bit of introduction, I'm a former officer in the United States Navy, a former adjunct law professor of laws of armed conflict for the Defense Institute of International Legal Studies, former managing editor of the Naval Law Review, as well as a decorated veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom, deployed to Forward Operating Base Shield in Sadr City. The first bill I would like to discuss is Bill 5730, and I've condensed a much longer written testimony, but I am in wholehearted support of this bill in solidarity with any honorably discharged veteran. When a person raises their right hand in service to their country, even in peacetime, they do so with the understanding that any day our nation could be called to war. And those are not the decisions of the military, those are decisions of our elected officials and the decisions of other nations. It's only through benevolent fortune far outside their control that they complete their service without being called to wartime duty. Furthermore, definitions of wartime service are not all inclusive of every time a service member has been in harm's way. For example, if we look at federal law, the USS Cole bombing, which was a suicide attack by Al-Qaeda in October of 2000, the survivors of this attack under federal law are not considered wartime veterans. Now, Connecticut has fortunately taken a much more expansive view in our definition, but if the federal law, which should ostensibly be much more in touch with what is and is not a combat environment, could miss something as glaringly obvious as the USS Cole, we can't be certain that our own definition is exhaustive as well. And finally, peace. not war, should be our default. Peace is what those who serve in the armed forces want. Nobody wants to go to war. Nobody dislikes the notion of war more than those who are going to be directly impacted by it. And those who serve in times of peace, by contributing to a strong force and standing ready to ensure that peace, should not be penalized for the simple fact that their efforts in power projection and sustained vigilance in shielding our foreign allies from external threats proved successful for the time of their service. So I would urge this committee to support this bill and treat any honorably discharged veteran the same under Connecticut law. Additionally, I would like to speak about Bill 130. I am opposed to this bill. I believe it comes from a place of extraordinarily good intentions, but therein lies the problem. In recent years, many similarly well-intentioned efforts to aid veterans have begun to result in unfortunate and prevalent stigmas and stereotypes that now attach to all veterans, particularly in their efforts to gain meaningful employment. Veterans are grossly disproportionately represented in the ranks of underemployed, which contributes to a great deal of depression within the veteran community. When we think about alerts, when we think about these, for whom do our billboards light up and our cell phones buzz? Children, elderly with dementia or Alzheimer's, individuals with cognitive impairment. Some states also have perpetrators of violence against law enforcement or perpetrators of serious hit and runs. In fact, interestingly, under Connecticut law, the Amber Alert explicitly excludes runaways. So this law would effectively be giving more agency to a child to say, I don't like my surroundings, I'm going to take off for a little bit, than to a member of the armed forces who may decide they just need a break. The categories for these alerts tend to be either people who we have concerns about their cognitive process or people who pose a danger to society. And veterans are neither of these things. And we have to think of the impact it puts subconsciously on the non-veteran population to see things like, oh, there's a veteran missing. This is something to worry about, as if that veteran is someone to worry about. And I think, again, it's coming from a place of very good intentions. But if Connecticut really wants to do something about mental health issues related to veterans, first of all, I think we need to stop looking at suicide as a veteran problem and start looking at it as a societal problem, because the rate of suicide has increased across the board. Part of the problem with the veteran suicide statistics is that the greatest at-risk group for suicide is Caucasian males, who are grossly disproportionately represented in the veteran rank. So you're taking a sample set that is already disproportionately at risk. Of course, your end result will also be disproportionate. And I would also note that studies have also shown that of the Iraq and Afghanistan generation, which I myself belong to, those who did not deploy are 16% more likely to fall into that suicide category. And I believe the reason for that, there have been a number of studies on that, but one of the reasons they suspect is because individuals with pre-existing mental health issues are often caught and flagged during the deployment screening process and are medically separated, so before they have ever deployed. But because of the way that veteran suicide is being publicly addressed, and it's a good thing that we are addressing it and are talking about it, because it is a problem. There are people who do need help. There's this perception that it's all because of people deploy and they get PTSD, when the numbers actually show the opposite. The ones who deployed are less likely. So we can talk about other ways to address mental health. And some of those things we can talk about are crisis lines that are actually staffed by veterans. A lot of veterans don't want to talk to civilians about their experiences. A lot of veterans feel much more comfortable speaking to someone who can give them empathy, not pity. And so if we were to invest money in that, staff our crisis lines with actual veterans, that would be helpful. We can also look at things like the mental health care field in general. Many mental health care providers are moving away from insurance models and into direct billing models because they're not being adequately reimbursed by insurance companies. This creates—
Ms. Trudeau, if you could wrap up and then the committee can ask you any questions they have, that would be great.
Sure, absolutely. I apologize. I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but the two ultimate endpoints is we need to look at how we can incentivize mental health care providers to take on veteran patients. And we also need to look at veteran employment, meaningful, gainful employment commensurate with a veteran's skills and experience to end the underemployment problem in the veteran community. And there are a number of ways. I've written some in my written testimony, and I would be happy to speak offline about additional ideas of how we can make that happen. So pending your questions, I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Trudeau, for your testimony today. We really appreciate you taking the time to come and speak to us. Are there any questions for Ms. Trudeau? Okay. Ms. Trudeau, thank you so much for taking the time to come speak to us. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Okay, up next we have is Ms. Kathy Flaherty in the room. Good morning, Ms. Flaherty.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. The floor is
Thank
yours,
you,
ma'am.
Senator Cabrera, Representative Boyd, ranking members of the Veterans Committee. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me. I can make my testimony very short. Listen to Emily. I'm also here against Senate Bill 130. I agree. It's filed with the best of intentions. This bill has been up before for your consideration. And the reason I'm here speaking about it is I was approached by Steve Kennedy a couple years ago when it was first proposed. And he said, could you help us defeat this bill? And I said, I'd be honored to stand beside you in doing that. I think Emily really hit everything I would say. Best of intentions, but it creates a problem for people in the future. And if you want to address mental health needs, address those effectively and make sure people can, get the jobs they want to get at, have the housing, meet their basic needs, instead of setting up a special alert system that will draw attention to somebody who may be struggling on a bad day, but will forever be there when you search that person's name. We know it's long lasting. And I know that people want to have this help, but it makes it difficult. Hopefully my internet connection is not too unstable. Whenever I get that note flashing across my screen, I get worried. I'm also here supporting 5592 and 788 for the reasons Steve Kennedy outlined in his testimony. And I appreciate that my Representative Trudeau is here. And I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Thank you so much, Ms. Flaherty. Thank you so much. Are there any questions for Ms. Flaherty? Okay. Flaherty, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Have a good day. Is Ms. Regina Graziano back, Erica, or is she still not here?
No, she's not.
Okay. I think that's it, right? We don't have any others?
Yep, that's correct.
Fantastic. Well, before we conclude, thought that was pretty good, Representative Boyd, or is there anything, last minute comments before we sign off? Nope, I don't see any. Great. Well, thank you, Liz. Eric, any housekeeping that we need to be aware of?
We have a committee meeting coming up on Tuesday morning, Tuesday the 16th, and then another public hearing coming up on Thursday the 18th. So okay. I hope everyone has a relaxing 4-day weekend, and then we've got a lot of work to do next week.
Great. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate your time.